The headline this month was Reporting Relief, but the real story is where the pressure is moving next. While companies welcomed the revised ESRS proposals, regulators also moved on greenwashing enforcement, CSDDD guidance, CBAM, packaging rules, deforestation due diligence, forced labor imports, and climate reporting deadlines. So this month is not just about easier reporting. It is about stronger evidence. Can companies prove their claims? Can they explain their supplier due diligence? And can they support product, carbon, packaging, and import data? That is the shift we are covering today. Less broad ESG disclosure, more practical proof. The first major update is the ESRS simplification. On June 3rd, the feedback period on the revised European Sustainability Reporting Standards closed. There were 453 submissions and around 2/3 came from businesses and business associations. The revised ESRS were broadly welcomed, but respondents also raised concerns about broad exemptions, such as allowing companies to skip certain information when collecting it would be too costly or time-consuming. Respondents also raised questions about asset manager exemptions, the definition of positive impacts, and anticipated financial effects. The next step is for the European Commission to review the feedback and move toward adopting the final delegated act revising the ESRS. Another important update came from Germany. On the 2nd of June, the UN Global Compact Network Germany published an analysis of 254 company reports under the German Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, or LkSG, covering 2023 and 2024. The report shows that mandatory due diligence rules have changed company behavior. Almost every company in the sample had set up the required management systems, and almost every company had conducted risk analysis. This is a major change compared with the earlier voluntary framework. But there's also a more challenging finding. Nearly half of the companies reported no prioritized risks in their own operations. The analysis also highlights grievance mechanisms as an important way to identify issues at indirect suppliers. The LkSG causal chain is broadly operating as designed. But disclosure data alone cannot verify remediation quality or actual improvements for affected workers. That is an important distinction. A system can exist on paper. The harder question is whether it leads to better outcomes. The next update is about the CSDDD. On June 12, the European Commission opened a consultation on the development of CSDDD guidelines. Feedback is open until July 24, 2026. The consultation is part of the Commission's process to prepare guidance under Article 19 of the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. The guidelines are expected to clarify obligations and expectations on topics such as risk identification, prioritization, stakeholder engagement, remediation, and contractual clauses. Some guidelines must be adopted by July 26 in 2027, while others are later to come. We'll come back to this in today's deep dive. The next set of updates all point to one operational challenge. Companies need better product level and supply chain data. Also on June 12, the Council of the EU agreed on its position on strengthening CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. The Council supports extending CBAM scope to selected downstream products. The purpose is to reduce carbon leakage risks for the EU-made products that use CBAM-covered goods. The Council also largely supports the Commission's proposed anti-circumvention measures. That includes bringing pre-consumer metal scraps into scope and allowing action against deceptive reporting practices by high-risk companies. The position also clarifies the process to temporary CBAM exemptions in serious and unforeseen circumstances, including where severe price increases affect the EU market. Next, negotiations with the European Parliament are expected to start once Parliament adopts its position. The aim is to reach an agreement before the end of the year. For companies, the practical issue is product information. If CBAM moves further down the value chain, more companies may need to understand the materials, emissions data, and supplier information connected to their goods. Packaging is also moving in the same direction. On June 11th, the German Bundestag adopted the government's draft law adapting the German packaging law to the EU packaging and packaging waste regulation. The law still requires Bundesrat approval before it enters into force. It is designed to align with the August 2026 timeline when the new EU packaging rules become directly applicable across all EU member states and will replace the current German Packaging Act. Recycling targets for plastic waste will increase to 75% from 2028 and 80% from 2030. The law also introduces binding requirements on recycled content, reusability, compostability, packaging size limits and labeling. The Bundestag also called on the government to quickly adopt further rules to promote packaging recyclability and the use of recyclates. Recyclate-related rules are planned to apply in 2027. For companies selling packaged products, this is not just a waste policy issue. It affects packaging design, material selection, labeling, and product compliance. Another supply chain update came from the UK. On the 23rd of June, the UK government published its approach to deforestation regulations. The planned rules would apply to businesses in Great Britain with annual turnover above £1 million that use forest risk commodities and wood products. The commodities covered would include wood, cattle, cocoa, coffee, palm oil, rubber, soy, and certain derived products, such as chocolate and furniture. Businesses would need to establish a due diligence system, report on their activity, and collect geolocation data on product origins. The UK government expects legislation for the Great Britain regime to be delivered in 2027, with consultation starting this year. Northern Ireland will follow a different path because the EUDR will apply there from December 30th, 2026 for large and medium operators. For companies, the key point is product origin data. Deforestation rules are not only about policy commitments. They require companies to know where commodities come from, how origin data is collected, and whether due diligence systems can support market access. The reporting landscape also moved for non-EU companies. On June 16, EFRAG's Sustainability Reporting Technical Expert Group discussed an unapproved draft version of the ESRS for non-EU groups. Consultation is expected in mid-July of 2026. These standards, called NESRS, will apply to certain non-EU groups with significant EU activities. First reports are expected in 2029, based on the financial year of 2028. The draft focuses on impact materiality compared with the ESRS. The draft removes risks, opportunities, resilience, and dependencies. It follows the ESRS structure, covering 2 cross-cutting standards and 10 topical standards. Following omnibus negotiations, the scope covers non-EU companies with more than 450 million euros of EU turnover and either an EU branch or EU subsidiaries exceeding 200 million euros turnover starting for financial years of 2028. The message is clear. Large non-EU groups may still face EU sustainability reporting requirements if their EU footprint is significant enough. There was also a climate reporting update from California. On the 25th of June, the California Air Resource Board, or CARB, announced that it will propose a 3-month delay for this year's Scope 1 and 2 greenhouse gas emission reporting deadline under SB 253. The deadline would move from August 10th to November 10th, 2026. CARB also said it will propose limited changes to clarify certain requirements, with a forthcoming 15-day public comment period. It withdrew the initial regulation and related rulemaking documents submitted to the California Office of Administrative Law and plans to resubmit them. The companion climate risk reporting requirement under SB 261 remains paused because a court temporarily blocked enforcement while the appeal continues. The message here is important. California climate disclosure is still moving, but the timeline and rulemaking process remain unsettled. For companies, that means monitoring deadlines closely, but also keeping Scope 1 and 2 data preparation moving. And finally, Canada introduced legislation to strengthen its ban on importing goods produced with forced labor. The proposed act would replace the current import prohibition under the customs tariff with a standalone legislative framework. High-risk goods could require enhanced supply chain tracing before import. Goods identified as high risk could be deemed prohibited from importation if mandatory information requirements are not met. The bill is still early in the legislative process, but the direction matters. Forced labor enforcement is becoming more connected to customs controls and traceability. Taken together, these updates point in one direction. ESG is becoming less about broad statements and more about specific evidence. This is why the CSDDD consultation is the right place to go deeper. The deep dive this month is the CSDDD guidelines consultation. On the 12th of June 2026, the European Commission opened a consultation on guidelines under the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. Feedback is open until July 24th of 2026. This matters because the CSDDD sets the direction, but companies still need practical clarity. What does good due diligence actually look like? The guidelines are expected to cover several important areas: risk identification, risk prioritization, stakeholder engagement, remediation, and contractual clauses. These are the areas where due diligence becomes real. First, risk identification. Companies need a structured process to identify where the most serious human rights and environmental risks exist across their operations and value chain. Second, prioritization. Companies need a clear way to decide which risks come first. Can they explain why one supplier, product, region, or issue receives more attention than another? That is where due diligence becomes a management decision. Third, stakeholder engagement. The guidance is expected to help clarify how companies should engage with affected stakeholders. Stakeholder engagement matters because workers and communities often identify risks that supplier questionnaires or audits miss. Fourth, remediation. If harm is found, who investigates it? Who owns the response? And who tracks whether corrective actions actually worked? And finally, contractual clauses. Contract clauses help set expectations, but they cannot replace ongoing risk assessment, monitoring, and corrective action. So the key message is simple. The CSDDD is moving from legal text into practical implementation. The deadline to watch is July 24th, 2026. This is the moment for stakeholders to give feedback before the guidance develops further. The question for company is not, do we have a policy? It is, can we show how due diligence works in practice? For companies, this month's updates can be translated into 3 work streams: claims, suppliers, product data. These are the areas where the updates become practical. First, review claims before they reach the market. Companies should review environmental claims across products, packaging, marketing materials, and customer communications. The key question is, what evidence supports the claim? If a product is described as sustainable, what does that mean? If packaging is described as recyclable, under what conditions? If a durability or repairability claim is made, is it accurate and documented? This review should not happen only at the end of a campaign. It should be built into the claims approval process. The goal is not to slow marketing down. The goal is to avoid unsupported claims entering the market. Second, rank supplier and product risks. The CSDDD consultation, LkSG analysis, and Canada Forced Labour proposal all point toward better supplier risk management. Companies should identify which suppliers, regions, materials, and product categories need closer review. This does not mean treating all suppliers the same. It means ranking risk. Which goods may be exposed to forced labor concerns? Which suppliers are connected to higher risk regions? Which materials are critical for CBAM, packaging, or customer due diligence expectations? Which indirect suppliers may need more visibility? This is also the right time to review grievance channels and escalation processes. If a risk is found, who receives it, who investigates it, who decides what action is needed, and who tracks whether the issue has been addressed? That is where supplier due diligence becomes useful rather than purely administrative. Third, locate product level and reporting data. The CBAM update, packaging rules, UK deforestation approach, California climate update, forced labor proposal, and an ESRS process all create demand for better data. Companies should map where relevant information actually sits. For packaging, that may include material composition, recyclability, recycled content, reusability, compostability, size and labeling. For UK deforestation rules, it may include commodity origin, supplier due diligence, and geolocation data. For CBAM and carbon climate reporting, it may include material inputs, emissions data, calculation methods, supplier data, import-related documentation, as well as reporting timelines. All of this data may not sit in one place. It may be spread across procurement, product development, supply chain, customs, sustainability, finance, and ERP systems. So the immediate task is not to build a perfect system overnight. The first task is to know where the data is, who owns it, and where the gaps are. For leadership, this month is not mainly about tracking every regulatory detail. It is about governance. The board does not need to debate every technical point of ESRS, CSDDD, CBAM, packaging law, deforestation rules, climate disclosure, or forced labor controls. But it does need to know where ESG risk sits inside the business. That starts with ownership. ESG ownership often sits across multiple functions, as different perspectives are relevant. For example, the sustainability team may coordinate reporting whilst procurement teams manage the supply chain, whereas the product teams own designs and the material used. The risk is fragmentation. Everyone owns a piece, no one owns the system. Boards should ask, who owns claims governance, who owns supplier risk prioritization, who owns product-level sustainability data, who owns import evidence, and who connects these across the business. The second question is exposure. Which product suppliers, regions, and markets carry the highest risk? And the third question is investment. Supplier mapping, product data, claims, governance, packaging redesign, traceability, and reporting controls all take time. If companies wait until enforcement arrives, the response becomes more expensive and more disruptive. The boardroom message is simple. ESG is no longer only a reporting topic. It is a control and market access issue. Looking ahead, there are a few dates and decisions companies should keep on the radar. The most immediate one is July 24th of 2026. That is the deadline for feedback on the CSDDD guidelines consultation. This is worth watching because the guidance will help shape what practical due diligence looks like, especially around risk prioritization, stakeholder engagement, remediation, and contractual clauses. Another item to watch is the final revised ESRS Delegated Act. The feedback period has now closed, so the next question is how the Commission will respond. Companies should look closely at how the final text handles reliefs, like undue cost or effort. The important issue is whether simplification creates real clarity or whether it leaves companies with new interpretation questions. The ESRS process is also moving. Consultation is expected in mid-July of 2026. This matters especially for large non-EU groups with significant EU activity. The first reports are expected in 2029, based on the financial year of 2028. But companies should not treat that as distant. Group-level reporting systems often need a long runway. CBAM is another regulation to keep watching. The Council has agreed its position, but negotiations with the European Parliament still need to happen. The key questions are which downstream products will be included, how the anti-circumvention measures will be finalized, and whether agreement can be reached before the end of the year. The UK deforestation regime is also worth watching. The government expects legislation for Great Britain to be delivered in 2027, with consultation starting this year. California is another important watch item. CAR plans to propose a 3-month delay for this year's Scope 1 and 2 reporting deadline under SB 253, moving it from 10th of August to 10th of November in 2026. Companies should watch the forthcoming 15-day public comment period and the resubmitted rulemaking documents. SB 261 remains paused during the ongoing appeal, so climate risk reporting in California is still legally uncertain. Packaging should also stay on the agenda. The new EU packaging rules apply from 2026 in August. Companies should watch the recycled-related rules planned for 2027 and the higher plastic recycling targets from 2028 and 2030. And outside the EU, Canada's forced labour bill is worth monitoring, as it is still going through the legislative process. But the proposed model is important because it links forced labour enforcement to high-risk goods lists and enhanced supply chain tracing. So the message this month is simple. The sustainability report may get lighter, but the evidence trail will not. That is the shift companies need to prepare for. Not by chasing every rule in isolation, but by building the controls behind the rules. Claims need evidence. Supplier risk needs visibility. Product data needs ownership. And boards need a clear view of where ESG affects market access, cost, and business continuity. This is the next phase of ESG. Less noise, more control. Let us know in the comments which update matters most for you and your business right now. And for more detailed resources, guidance, and related insights, check the links in the description below. If you found this update useful, subscribe to the channel for more monthly ESG and supply chain regulatory updates. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.